Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the administration's strategy is very clear. Rather than peace through strength, it's really peace through withdrawal. And we've seen that. Just very succinctly, I want to kind of build to give you an opportunity to expound a little bit more on a couple of points. But do either of you believe that there's any reason whatsoever for Iran to have a peaceful nuclear program or enrich for a peaceful program? Mr. Singh, in your testimony, not, but...
I would say that most of these activities in which Iran is engaged don't have a clear, sensible civilian purpose.
There's only one reason. Dr. Pollack, you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
So they want a nuclear weapon. It's clear. Do either of you believe with this deal that they've really abandoned that ambition?
No, I mean quite the opposite. I think this will enable them to cement that nuclear weapons option.
Dr. Pollack.
I don't know. That's my position on this. I think that the Iranians have made an agreement. I think that it is likely for the next 3, 5, perhaps 10 years, they won't try to acquire a nuclear weapon. I think that it is advantageous to them to agree to this. What I don't know about is what happens after 10 years.
I'm fairly certain. You did mention that it's going to cause a conventional arms race. I agree with that. New tensions, new challenges. You said we can avoid that if the U.S. steps up, acts with determination, isn't backing down, doesn't convey weakness. Again, in your own words, Dr. Pollack said the list goes on that contradict us showing any kind of strength, correct?
We would need to do better than we've done so far, Senator.
So again, here are my assumptions, here are my predictions. Iran is going to be on a path to get a nuclear weapon, and Mr. Singh, I think you laid out very carefully or convincingly in your testimony that they're going to use this agreement to do exactly that. I mean, they're just kind of delay it. This gives them the time to build up their capabilities, so when all these things go away, they're right there. So that being the case, the fact that we really have been engaged in the strategy of peace through withdrawal, what's going to happen over the 18 months, the next 18 months? I mean, predict that out. I mean, how is Iran going to behave? How are they going to increase their influence? What is the next president going to have to deal with, and how are they going to be able to deal with this situation in 18 months? I'll start with you, Mr. Singh.
Look, I think that Iran's regional strategy will remain essentially the same, except that they will have more resources to pursue it and fewer impediments ahead of them, except to the extent that now we engage in new policies to create more impediments as a result of this deal.
But again, a conventional arms race, so those Gulf states are building up arms. We obviously can't train and engage in the strategy. You said it was a great strategy, just impossible to implement in Syria. Okay, so arms race, no pushback in Syria whatsoever, withdrawal from Iraq, Iran increasing influence in Iraq. What is this going to look like in 18 months?
Well, I think it looks worse, frankly. And just a clarification on the arms race. I don't disagree with the idea there's going to be an arms race, but I think we need to bear in mind it's going to be asymmetric. I don't think the Iranians are going to be building aircraft carriers. I think they're going to continue to invest in these asymmetric capabilities, relatively cheap. It's an anti-access area denial strategy, but they'll, again, sort of have more resources to do it. And so it's not just a money against money sort of challenge here, as it's been characterized out there a little bit so far.
But again, that asymmetric strategy has been extremely effective at stabilizing the region, right, and really accomplishing their strategic objectives, Iran's.
Well, not effective in stabilizing the region. Maybe I misheard you.
No, destabilizing.
I mean, Iran has not had success, for example, in winning the war in Syria. I don't think they have had much success against ISIS. But again, I think that if their strategy is simply to project their power and influence, their influence in Syria over the Assad regime is now, I would say, almost total. Their influence in Lebanon is very significant. Their influence in Iraq has grown, and they've made the environment less hospitable to U.S. forces, to U.S. action, and to our allies. So
I'd say their strategy was destabilizing the region.
Yes, absolutely. So I think to their objectives, I think it's been some success. Not a total success, mind you. I wouldn't go that far. I think they've had their setbacks.
Dr. Pollack, and then I'd like both of you to just comment on what is the next president going to have to do?
I think the next president is going to have a very challenging situation in the Middle East to face. I don't know what the Obama administration is going to do. I hope they will do better in the future than I would say they've done in the past. I can point to things that they've done in the past, even in the Middle East, where they surprised me and did more than I expected them to, and it was important. Iraq being a perfect example. I was very fearful throughout all of last summer that they were simply going to pack up and say, well, we gave Iraq a chance and walk away. They didn't. They stepped up. And the air campaign was extremely important. So too is the provision of advisors and military support. I would like to see them do more, but I'm trying to give them credit. So it is conceivable to me. If they don't, if their first 6 years are more in keeping with how they handled the last 18 months, then yes, I suspect you will see the Iranians push. We will not respond. It will frighten our regional allies who may do some additional precipitous things, as they did in Yemen. That is going to create an even longer list of challenges for the next president.
And that next president should do what?
It's a hell of a question, Senator. I'm working on that hard because I fear, I will put it this way, that if we do not step up, if we are not willing to push back on the Iranians and reassure our allies, that by the time the next president takes office and realistically is able to assemble his or her staff and get his or her policies set, that we may really have only two options in the Middle East, which will be what I'm calling either we step up and make a much greater investment to try to restore the situation, or we step back. And we really do try to define what are our absolute red lines and nothing else, and we let the rest of the region sort itself out in what will be an unbelievably bloody and uncertain process that could go in a variety of directions that would be very harmful to our interests.
Mr. Singh.
Look, I think that as you look at this deal and everything surrounding the deal, obviously there are a lot of problems in the Middle East, which the next president is going to inherit. I don't think it's reasonable to expect any administration to solve all the problems on its watch. I think the question is, are you bequeathing to your successor a productive framework? Are you bequeathing the tools? Are you bequeathing strong alliances and a strong diplomatic process? And I worry that, in fact, that's not going to be the case here, that, in fact, you'll have diminished tools, weakened alliances, and really, as we've been talking about so far, no real framework to address these issues. And so I think the next president is going to have to come in, look at all these problems in the Middle East, and do a sort of top-to-bottom review and start with a strategy. Not start by sort of one-offing each problem, but a strategy for the region which is going to center on, I think, rebuilding alliances first and foremost, and then with those allies coming up with some joint approaches to these problems.
My interpretation of the testimony is that the implications for the Middle East is making the situation worse. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.